Guys, I'm back. Let me start by changing my chat moderation filter so I receive all messages. Getting on my desktop. Okay. What is okay? All right. Look, check my dashboard. Cloudbot. Okay. All right. Move this out the way so I can see my screen. All right. Sorry about that. And get comfy. That is a requirement. Get comfy. That is a requirement. So, all right, now we're going to start. So, no one's in the chat room yet, but I'm going to proceed. So, I did a live stream last week. Didn't have any, didn't really have any commenters in the chat room. That's fine. No chat room, no biggie. But I was basically saying I was going to pivot from what I was doing previously in the last 3.5 years, where I took it, I took it as funny bashing younger folks, particularly Gen Z, and I said I wasn't going to do that anymore in my last live stream. I said in that live stream I was, um, you know, going to start defending Gen Z, and you know, not only would I defend them in that live stream, but I would from thereafter not bash them in any future live streams because they make up the bulk of social media, I believe. Well, they and millennials. So, also, I'm not gonna like go tit for tat with trolls. It's just not worth it. Like the person I just blocked here, it's not worth it. It was fun, but it doesn't get me more clicks and views. Um, it's not putting money in my Cash App, so I'm not gonna do that. Um, but yeah, like I was saying, I wanted to give a full throttle defense of Gen Z last week, and it didn't really go as planned because I didn't have enough people in the chat room to piggyback those ideas. But I wanted to go further with that today, with saying I understand why a lot of Gen Z think America sucks, because I share many of their views on some of these things. Uh, I mean, let's just get the first part out the way. It's not America doesn't offer them what it offered their parents and their grandparents. It doesn't. Now, is I will say yes. Life is easier in many respects than it was, you know, 30, 40, 50 years ago. I'm just straightening myself out here. But things aren't all peachy clean. Like you have these techno billionaires who are so fucking wealthy and have nothing else better to do because they literally have everything that they want, that they've started making dick rockets to go into outer space. Like, I love space travel and space exploration. So cool. But when one person, what's up, HGTY? But when one person is so rich that they can literally fund their own way into outer space by building their own space, their own space vehicles, that's crazy. And and if it was just their own money, that would be fine. What makes it worse is that not only are they so rich they can build their own space rockets to go into outer space, they actually get government subsidies to do it, which means taxpayers are literally paying for these techno billionaires to subsidize their passion projects to go into outer space with no reward to the taxpayers. Now, I will say, to be fair, at least Elon Musk with his SpaceX um, company actually is paying dividends back to Americans. Like, they're actually working with NASA. Colton says, "Hi, what's up?" Um, at least they're actually working with NASA and I believe the ESA as well to actually help put American astronauts into outer space. That's more than I can say for like uh, what Jeff Bezos is doing, and I can't remember the other person. Was it Richard Branson? It was either Richard Branson or Mark Zuckerberg who was also funding their space project. I can't remember if it was Richard Branson or Mark Zuckerberg, or it might be both of them. But you literally have billionaires who literally have everything and every need met. So they're either building space rockets or creating large large um, underground bunkers that would make a doomsday prepper uh, salivate at the sight of it. Like, I consider myself somewhat part of the prepper community, and I can tell you, I like looking at Mark Zuckerberg's huge underground bunker he created in Hawaii. He's not the only one who's done that. There's been several of them that's created these little bunkers, and that makes some people paranoid. Like, oh, why are they creating bunkers? What do they know that we don't? They're not privy to. Well, let me take that back. They might be privy to some things that we don't know, but anyone can be a prep. Anyone could become a prepper. Um, Pushing that aside, again, my point about the techno billionaires building huge dick rockets to go into outer space because they have nothing else better to do with their money. My point is, if you don't want younger people um, embracing socialism, you should stop allowing billionaires to flash their big money dicks in everyone's face. HGTY says he has $1 trillion. No, no one's a trillionaire yet. Elon Musk did say on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. No one calls it X. We all still call it Twitter. But anyway, he said on on X that he does plan on becoming the first trillionaire. And with where he's going right now, with the current amount of money that he has, and if you understand the magic of compound interest, if you don't, you should learn it because you want to, have an IRA or uh, or something uh, that can gain compound interest to take care of you when you get older. But anyway, so I have one. I'm not saying I have a lot of money in it, but whatever. Any case, um, what's up, Carlton? He said, salute, Just A Contrarian in chat. Kashawn Khan said, did you really score 100 points? In reference to what are you talking about, Kashawn? Feel like there's a setup there, so I don't know what you're referencing. Anyway, Clerk 06 says, Jesus loves you. Appreciate it. You said you're Wilt Chamberlain, right? I'm trying to defend your generation. Um, don't make me regret that. Uh, Everyone knows Wilt Chamberlain died back in the 90s, okay? It was the early 2000s. No, it was the 90s. So, no. And I'm not anywhere near 7 feet tall like he was. I doubt you even know who Wilt Chamberlain is. Anywho, the the, the comedy is pretty whack, bro. Like if you're gonna roast someone, be funny. The number one rule of roasting someone is you gotta be funny. All right. So anyway, so like I said, with these techno billionaires, yes, it pisses a lot of people off. Um, and this is regardless of political affiliation. Carlton says Wilt Chamberlain Gen Z is cooked. I'm trying to defend them though, bro. I'm like, so I did a whole live stream last week. No one watched, but I was going to attempt uh to defend them. Here I'm doing like a sort of a sequel to that where I'm saying I understand why they think America stinks. And the first reason is we have more billionaires in America than in any other place in the world. New York City alone used to have more billionaires than most of the world, and then I think I think Beijing uh, eventually had more. I think it's Beijing. It's either Beijing or no, it's not Singapore. Yeah, Beijing. I think Beijing currently has the most billionaires uh, per capita in one city, but it used to be New York City. But the fact that one city in this country can have more billionaires than the entire world is redonkulous. But even still, even if we don't hold the most billionaires per capita in one city anymore, we still hold the most billionaires in our country. Let me hold on. Let me get my glasses, guys, because you guys are gonna make me work. I already see you guys are gonna make me work, and that's great. I want you to make me work. Make me work. All right. Be right back. I'm back. I gotta just get my reading glasses. All right. Sorry about that. Um, do not pass says their communist country. There are no billionaires. The government owns everything in Beijing. My friend in Saudi Arabia, they own their country. Plus, they have the oil money. You are incorrect, sir. Um, Back in the 90s, China did have a did adopt a market economy. They're still an authoritarian state, but they're not they're not a pure communist state. Pure communism does not work and has never worked. Social that because the reason why communism has never worked is because socialism doesn't work. Communist Communism is the end state of socialism. No country has ever reached that end state of communism because socialism has always failed in real world tests. Either they've become a failed state or they end up adapting the market economy, which is what China did. you have to separate the fact that they're an authoritarian state from the fact that they're from the fact um, of you know, they 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 don't have they no longer have a centrally planned economy. Okay, they have a market economy which they regulate and tinker with, which is why you should not invest in Chinese companies because the 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 CCP regularly interferes with the flow of the market there. But they're no longer essentially planned economy as it was under Chairman Mao back in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s. Like they learned from their mistakes. So they have a market economy. They're not a communist country. And if you think they don't have any billionaires, then you are woefully illiterate on the state of China. China is China is America's number one rival. They have more billionaires in China has some of the. If you don't think there's billionaires in China, um, I have a bridge to sell you, uh, because there are very many, very many billionaires in China. Very many. Most of them are part of the CCP, though. Like many of them are members of the Communist Party in China. But that is the Communist Party in China allows people to get rich as long as they obey. The current president, Xi Jinping, is a billionaire. What are you talking about? Many of the people, uh, many of the upper level leaders in the CCP are all billionaires. Many of the and there's many companies in China with people who are billionaires. Why do you, they have whole reality shows now showing nepo babies of these of these wealthy Chinese leaders and business officials in China. There's reality shows on these nepo babies showing how they live. So I don't know what you're talking about, but you need to. I think you need to reassess the facts. LSM 1797, excuse me, 1797 says I love USA and I'm a foreigner. That's what's up. Hope you get to visit if you haven't already. Robert Khan says, "Up, dude." In a minute, what's today's topic? Oh, well, today's topic is why Gen Z thinks America stinks. Robert kind of says, "I'm sorry, what I meant to say was, what's up, dude? What's the topic today?" No, I got you. What's up? He said, "Oh yeah, they're doing that stuff over in China that we wish we were doing here." Yeah, I don't know where that guy thought that there are no billionaires in China. Um, yes, the Chinese Communist Party runs the Chinese government, but that doesn't mean that the country itself is communist. It hasn't. First of all, like I said, I want to be I want to be a little bit pedantic here. I got my reading glasses on, so I can be a little bit pedantic. See, I'm in nerd mode, right? I got these glasses on. I'm in nerd mode. So I want to be perfectly clear. No country has ever reached, con- despite what they may name their country, there has been no country on record that has actually reached the state of communism because socialism has never there has because the failings of socialism in real world tests knows the end state of socialism is supposed to be communism, but no country has ever flourished under socialism to get to that final state of communism, which is basically a utopia. Every socialist state has either become a failed state, right? Some sort of authoritarian hellhole, or they've or they've switched up and became a market economy. Again, China became a market economy back in the 90s, maybe even the 80s, but I'm pretty sure the 90s. They are still an authoritarian state, and they still and the Chinese Communist Party does regularly interfere in the flow of their market economy. But a communist country or even a purely socialist country will have a centrally planned economy, not a market economy. That is one of the marquee uh, differences between a democratic capitalist society and a socialist slash communist uh, country, which is how they run their how they run the economy. Socialists and the communist states have centrally planned economies, like the Soviet Union did, like North Korea does, like Cuba does, and those are all fucked up places. Well, the Soviet Union failed and became Russia. Russia now, I believe, has a market economy, but again, like China, they heavily regulate that that market where it's not allowed to it's not allowed to thrive through the invisible hand of the laws of supply and demand. We and to be sure, we regulate our economy as well, but not to the extent that they do. Cat Robert says, the one thing that I don't like about America is we're so damn wasteful. I'm gonna get into that too. But like I said, so the first thing I was critiquing, which is why young people think America stinks, is that we have more billionaires in this country than anywhere else in the world, and it's a huge. Like I see people like Thomas Sowell and other conservatives or libertarians defending um, extreme income inequality, and Thomas Sowell always quip, "Well, how much inequality is allowed?" Meaning that there's always going to be economic inequality, which is facts. He's Thomas Sowell is completely right, but there is a difference between you know there being income inequality and extreme income inequality, and I think that's a fair point to discuss. And on this, I think for all my critics I've had over the past 3 years who think I'm just a, a, a conservative, Trump supporting Uncle Tom sellout, so and so forth. Um, Here's gonna change your mind. Now, people who never know me are gonna watch this and think I'm just lib- some liberal type person, and not they're wrong on that too. I'm just a contrarian. So look, like I said in the beginning, when you got techno billionaires who have nothing else better to do with their wealth than to make dick rockets into outer space or to build $100 million underground bunkers, it's going to piss some people off, people who are barely getting by. Like you can make the jokes about the avocado toast and stuff of the millennials that they used to do like 12 years ago. Oh, saying they rather have eat avocado toast than buy a house, which was that you could tell that only a baby boomer would say something that stupid. And the reason I'm gonna make fun of baby boomers is because they have given every single generation after them hell. They gave us, the Gen X generation, hell. They gave millennials hell. Now they're giving Gen Z hell. And they use the same tired, cliched critiques of every younger generation, not realizing that same critique, oh, they just don't want to work. That critique of the younger generation has literally been around since the 1800s. And I shit you not, because you can find it in old newspaper clippings from the 1800s of adults in the 19th century, in the 19th century, complaining, oh, these young people just don't want to work anymore. Robert kind of says I'm a right leaning liberal. That's fair. You're in the minority though, because like I think I told you, Robert, like when I first, you know, registered to vote when I was 18, I registered as a Republican, but I was a liberal Republican. Nowadays, that wouldn't even sound that nowadays that would sound like an oxymoron. But there were plenty of liberal Republicans in the late '90s and even into the early 2000s. Now they would be considered absurd. That would sound like a cuss word to someone. What you mean a liberal Republican? But that's because liberals aren't the same liberals anymore. I always say I'm the same dude from 1995, right? Like I was a liberal in 1995, but because I didn't pivot more towards the left as liberals have done, I've stayed buoyed to where I am. Now I'm right of center. So people mistake me for being a conservative, but I just say I'm a classical liberal. And the funny thing is, I did pivot to the left in college to try to be a progressive, but that started breaking down, you know, 13 years ago when they were trying to push everyone to accept identity politics, gender ideology, um, and make black people go against their own self interest in for the needs of other groups. Like no, Robert says, "Oh, believe me, I know that I'm in my own boat." All right, as long as you know, then we good. But no, I'm joking. But no, so like seriously, so the first thing I understand that Gen Z thinks, um, which pisses them off about America, is like we have all these billionaires, and now people are complaining, oh, these Gen Z are now wanting to be socialists because they never lived through the Cold War. Well, duh, yeah, they never lived through the Cold War. And whose job is it to inform them of the trials and tribulations from 50 years ago? It is there's that is the role of public education, and that is the role of their parents to be like, let me tell you about the Cold War and how we used to how we used to be scared of an apocalypse. That is the role of public education and parents. They failed, so so you can't be mad at Gen Z for not fearing something they never experienced. That's like being mad that someone isn't more scared of lions, tigers, and bears when they never experienced the fear of being around lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. Robert says the progressive ideology is absolutely grounded. Liberal identity is absolutely grounded. Liberal identity right down at the bottom at the ocean, man. Okay. Yeah, I'll get into that at another time. But yeah, um, so yeah, right there, like you see them embracing socialism. You see that they voted for Mondani in New York City, which I completely disagree with. And now the city is seeing a bunch of its wealthy fleeing the country. I mean, not fleeing the country. That might happen next, but the fleeing the city. Um, and now the city is in debt. And people are saying they better not get any federal bailouts because they chose that lot. I agree, but again, I, I I'm not going to point that at the Gen Z. I blame that the older folks, the older voters in New York City, because it's more by and large the older voters are the ones that really decide the elections. So these were the Gen X and the millennials and maybe baby boomers who voted for Mondani. They're the ones to be blamed, not Gen Z. But irrespective of the age cohort that voted him in, socialism seems more acceptable nowadays when we're living in corporate feudalism. Again, to put it in a more crude way, young people and I think Bill Maher said this years ago before I did, but yeah, I mean, if you don't want young people to embrace socialism, stop allowing millionaires to wave their big money dicks in front of their face. And you got people like Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. building dick rockets into outer space, and it's like, damn, they're so rich they can just build, like, they're not worrying about the next meal. They're not worrying, are they going to be able to pay their bills, keep the gas and electric on. They're not worried about it costing $6 a, $6-7 a gallon to fill up their tank. You know, they're good. They're Gucci. So automatically, people are gonna be less the less patriotic or whatever when they're living in a country where they feel like they've been dealt a deal where the billionaires have all the resources and they have virtually none, where they're living in a gig economy where they don't own anything. They rent, you know, they rent apartments because they can't afford to buy a home, which would be cheaper in the long run paying a mortgage than paying rent, which can go up, and you get nothing out of it at the end of the day. But look, they rent homes. They have to take a Uber or Lyft instead of, because they can't afford a car of their own. Um, then that means like getting getting groceries and stuff is gonna be more expensive, like DoorDash or whatever. Like the work you're doing can be gone tomorrow. There's no long term employment. You don't, and when you do work for a place, even if you do work for a place 30 years, you no longer get a pension. The only place you still get a pension now is in the government and the military. It's the only place you still get a pension. Um, so yeah, when you live, when you got young people growing up in what can either be called late stage capitalism or corporate feudalism, whatever term you want to uh, go by, it's going to make people more acceptable of socialism. Even though socialism is a horrible idea, they're gonna be like, they'll be willing to try it out just to say, yo, I'm done. Like, I'm tired of this bullshit. I'll like they're willing to try out socialism. Like, people like AOC and Bernie and Mondani, come on, 30 years ago, they wouldn't have had a shot in hell and really, you know, you know, being in the position that they are now. They just wouldn't. And don't get it twisted. I'm a capitalist, but being a capitalist does not mean you have to accept corporate feudalism or late stage capitalism. Those I have not read The Wealth of Nations yet by Adam Smith, but I am pretty sure that he would be against the type of system we see today. Pretty sure that he would. Like, often when we talk about people like Karl Marx and Adam Smith, who are like seemingly at polar opposites of the economic spectrum, when you actually read what they say, there's a lot more nuance in what they talk about in their respective um, opus opus mag opus magni. Okay, um, a little Latin for you there, but they're big books, right? The Wealth of Nations for Adam Smith, and for Karl Marx, the whatever book, I forgot. He has two big ones. Pause. But yeah, so that's the first thing. But a major thing right there. Also, let's get into the American justice system. the American justice system is fucking cooked. All right, like let's say for instance, you you run afoul of the law. Okay, here's what would have happened like 50 so years ago, right? If you're one of these guys who they used to give the euphemism from the wrong side of the tracks, which meant, you maybe committed a few crimes here and there, most probably mostly minor things, you still had a second chance to life because it didn't follow you throughout your whole life. Okay. you There weren't, you know, these background checks that would prevent you from housing or from employment. Um, you you wouldn't have to worry about, not being able to find a suitable mate because they'll just run a safety check on you, right? Um, so even a person, a scruffy looking, a scruffy looking nerf herder who maybe smuggled a time or two or did whatever could still have a shot at life because as long as he was willing to walk the line, his past didn't follow him throughout his entire life. Whereas now you're cooked. Look, if this is why people I understand. So when people talk about how soft Gen Z is, I mean, can you blame them? Would you want to run? Would you want to like just getting arrested is going to establish as a record, which is going to impinge on your very livelihood because you're competing against potentially millions of other applicants. If you try to, if you try to shoot for like one of these big name firms, say like Google, uh, or Meta or Amazon, like, look, the it don't matter how sterling your resume is. If they find that on your record, you're cooked. Even if it was just an arrest, now you gotta explain this to the hiring manager why they shouldn't automatically disqualify you when there's like literally hundreds of thousands of other applicants that don't have that problem that you did, even though you may have graduated from an elite university, 4.0 magna cum laude. um Kayshawn says you kind of look like Malcolm X. I don't think so. I don't. Again, I think you're foreign, bro. Because, and I'm not trying to insult you for being foreign. That's cool, whatever. I welcome people from other countries to watch my content. I hope more of you guys do. But to be sure, I do not like Malcolm X. He was a light skinned brother. He had red hair. We did not look alike. I'm from Iraq. Does that mean Iraq? Are you talking about Iraq? Anyway, yeah, I don't look at go look at some photos of, oh, Chicago. Then I don't know what you're talking about, brother. Like, have you ever seen pictures of Malcolm X? He is light skinned with red hair. I'm I am brown skinned with what used to be black hair, but now uh, salt and pepper. Unfortunately, he didn't live long enough to get gray hair because he died in his 30s. Um, but yeah, I, as big of a compliment as that would be, I look nothing like him. Anyway, so look, like I said, so if you run afoul of the justice system, like I said, even if you just have an arrest record, that could be better. That could keep you from getting the, the dream of your job. I mean, sorry, I said that in reverse. The job of your dreams, right? And if you have a serious record, you're you're fucking cooked. You're gonna be the uncle living, in the bedroom for the rest of your life. You'll be only able to get like a warehouse job or something like that, a warehouse job or a call center job. Do I hoop? No, not really. Like I haven't really played basketball since college, and I mean not played basketball like as for a team. I meant like just recreationally with my friends. I haven't played basketball since then. Wait, have I? No, I haven't. I know my wife's cousins wanted me to play basketball, but Filipinos love basketball. I don't think people know, but Filipinos love basketball, at least overseas. I don't know about here. Over in the Philippines, they love basketball. They even have their own Philippine basketball league, um, where the old NBA guy, the bisexual dude, he's now plays for them. Robert says you should get the fellas together for a pickup game. Man, that would be great. But we all live apart when we're all married. Um, I wish I could reach. Well, I mean, I did have I did reach out to them on Facebook. That might not be a bad idea, assuming they all still live in Maryland. I know most of them do, but uh, I think one of them was living in Hawaii and now he's back in Maryland. Um, you know what? I I'm I might try that. Thank you. I might actually try that. Keishawn says y'all and your wives cousins need to run a two S tournament. Well, two problems with that. My cousins are, I mean, her cousins are in the Philippines, so there's no way I can hook a game up between them and my friends unless my friends are willing to travel all the way to the Philippines to do that. And I doubt it. They're like me in their late 40s. I doubt they can just pick up and leave their family for like a week. Well, they might. I don't know. They might. I don't know. But yeah, that's not. I'll I'll just say that's not feasible. What is more likely is that we can just get a pickup game amongst us here. He said, "Where you live in Maryland?" Yeah, I thought yeah, I thought I told you that. But anywho, so let me get back to Gen Z's gripes with America. So all right, so I already established they think America stinks because like it's on a like you got billionaires waving their big money dicks in everyone's face and they're struggling just to get by. And you have a justice system that if they make any minor mistakes, he said, Shit, Allegheny County, Maryland represent over here. Okay, Allegheny County. That's Allegheny. That is Western Maryland, right? That's going towards more like Western Virginia. I mean West Virginia, right? Allegheny. Because I always forget where Allegheny. Because I start thinking of places like Harford County or Hereford. I don't know. People say Hereford here. I'm saying Harford. Whatever. Harford County and all those places. I forget where they are because Baltimore County reaches all the way up to Pennsylvania. But uh, yeah, I think Allegheny. I think it's Western Maryland, not Eastern Shore. I think. Okay, someone says you're a cool unk, bro. Appreciate it. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be the cool unk. All right. So yeah, so let me get back to what I'm saying here. So if a young person fouls up in any sort of way, their life is already cooked for the rest of their lives, and that's unfair. Like I said, previous generations, Gen X, the silent generation, they did all sorts of fucked up things, and it didn't then set the tone for the rest of their life that they can never come get from under. They can make their mistakes and it wouldn't follow them. Nowadays, anything you do will be permanently etched on you, and you can't get from under that. So if a lot of people are like, man, so again, and I want to make this clear, I have nothing against law enforcement officers, but you can understand young people's frustration when they say F the police, F ICE, and stuff like that when they feel that the legal system is unjust. I won't like I'm not going to touch into the ICE and the illegal immigration thing here. I've talked about that in the past, and that can be discussed in another stream. All I'll say is I respect law enforcement officers greatly. Have many of them in my family. Most people in my family, the males, um, have either been in the military or in law enforcement or some sort of first responder. Um, but that doesn't mean that the legal system isn't fucked up. It is highly unfair. Like again, for a young person who runs afoul of the law, um, except as a minor, like their life is cooked. Like maybe they can get an expungement or a pardon, but but until but if not, and until then, they will lead a disparate life. Like I said, unlike someone like from the silent generation or the silent generation or the baby boomer generation or even the earliest of Gen X, they could have done stuff and they wouldn't have to worry about it because they there wasn't all this litigiousness when it came to employment that it is now. There wasn't all this litigiousness when it came to getting housing like it is now. Why? Because there's limited housing. Employment because the labor force has doubled when women joined labor force in droves, cheapening cheapening the labor force uh, for employers. So that's another thing. We don't even make the same amount of money that our forefathers did because the labor force has been cheapened when it doubled by allowing all these women into so feminism has been the biggest setback for women themselves. Like they complain that people don't, people, you know, they can't afford certain things. So they want to live the single life. I was look, our system was never made. Kevin Samuels used to talk about this. Our system was never made for singles. It was made for families. The family is the basic unit of society, not singles, not single people. This is why the system worked, and the this is why a lot of criticism of feminism is thus that it wasn't anti men, it was anti family. Feminism was anti family more than it was anti men, because a lot of stuff that feminists advocate for are in the guy's interests, like casual sex without commitment and abortion. These work in men's favor, not women's. But it's against the but it's anti-family. Smart women knew, yeah, let me marry this guy. He'll take care of me. I don't have to work. I can just cook and clean, which takes just a few hours of the day, while he's working 7, 8, 9, 10 hours a day, taking care of us on top. But because it was mostly men in the labor force, well, I mean, there were women in the labor force too, but again, most of them, by the time they were married, they would stop working or they would only work part time. and usually they worked in specific fields, not in every field like they do now. So, um, male dominated parts of the economy paid very well. But once you threw women in and literally doubled the labor force, that meant employers could pay them much less because down the late because now the individual laborer worker is worth less. They can be easily replaced. So all that, if, if I wanted to sum this all up, I would say the reason why Gen Z thinks America stinks is because their parents and grandparents fucked up the country. Gen X and baby boomers and the silent generation fucked up the country. They did. And now they're the ones mad that Gen Z is often anti-American and unpatriotic. Here's another thing. Look at the way they teach public education. They teach history courses where you make America seems like the bad guy in everything. To be sure, America is deeply flawed in its history, but that's the case with every country. There is no country where it doesn't. There is no country that doesn't have skeletons in their closet. to 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 let some of these radical leftists take over history and make America seem evil. If you're only teaching that America sucks, people are gonna people are probably gonna think America sucks. Just saying. So conservatives have a point when they say we need to stop teaching young people that America is evil. So again, if you don't want people to think America sucks, you probably shouldn't teach that America sucks. You can be honest and say, look, these are some of the flaws that happened throughout America's history, but you also should point out all the good things as well. Because it would be dishonest if you didn't. Just like it would be dishonest to only point out the good things, it would be dishonest to point out only the bad things. When you have these, when you have leftists running public education and putting a black eye on everything American, why would a person what look why would a person think America is great when they're only taught everything bad about America? I mean, isn't that should almost be that should be common. I'm about to say that should be almost common sense. No, that is common sense. Like if you literally if you gone through your whole education and particularly in public schools, where have you only been taught throughout history that America is evil, slavery, uh, Indian genocide, oppression of women, and everything else in between, without teaching that how they corrected their own errors, not to mention the errors that started even that were brought to this country that didn't start in this country. I mean, you can't blame people for hating it. You see a lot of kids don't want to join the military and stuff like that. Who wants to fight for a country they think is evil, or fight for a country they think is don't have their best interests in heart? On top of that, again, a lot of them can't even afford to buy houses anymore. You know, if you have not noticed, homeowners tend to be way more patriotic than people who rent. Why? Because they actually have a physical stake and the well-being of their country when because they own property. When you own property, you feel a sense of belonging in this country that you do not feel when you're just a renter or living under someone else's roof. Okay, I'm a homeowner, but not here. I'm a homeowner in another country. Why do you think I talk about the Philippines so much? Right? Um, if you want people to have a to feel connected to this country, like they have something at stake here, that they're willing to fight for this country, you have to you have to allow them to have something that tangible that feel that makes them feel connected to this country. That's usually housing and marriage. Most people don't think they can afford to get married. Marriage is a luxury now of of the upper of the elite. I mean, yeah, anyone can just go to Vegas or go down to the courtroom and sign on the dotted line, but that's different from actually being in a marriage. Yeah, anyone can get wedded, but not everyone can afford marriage. So, with the two main things becoming more and more elusive to Gen Z and possibly to Gen Alpha as they get older, you can't expect them to care for their country. They can't afford to get married. They can't afford to have a home of their own. What makes you what makes you think is going to ground them here in this country other than making money? And then when that becomes something that they even can't do, all bets are off. Marriage is unaffordable, housing is unaffordable, and then once you take away jobs and they can only work little part-time gigs, then we're really cooked. And for all the people, especially in the red pill spaces, and saying, no, you guys should just, learn a trade. Stop saying that bullshit. First of all, to state the obvious, not everyone wants to work with their hands. If they do, kudos, go for it. The other problem is some of these trade jobs are gig jobs. Like they're saying, yeah, they need to get these people to become electricians so they can start building the new data centers of the future. First of all, a lot of states and cities within these states don't want data centers because they're not environmentally sound. They like they are a huge drain on the local environment. They require lots of water, and like I said, becoming an electrician will be is a sound job choice. But to say we need people to build these data centers, that's not long term employment. That is gig work. That's gig work. And on top of that, again, a lot of local politicians are fighting against data centers being built. So you can't even count on that. So again, not being able to afford housing, not being able to afford to get married, and maybe not having even regular employment anymore, but relying on a gig economy, and you want these people to feel some sort of allegiance to a country that gives them nothing, but wants them to be willing to defend it or share its love. And then on top of that, you send them to a public school where all they hear is how America is shit. And you wonder why they don't like America when the only thing they're taught in the school is how bad America is. They're not taught Columbus discovered America. They're taught, well, Columbus invaded America, um, and he raped and pillaged the natives and declared land that wasn't his to be that of Spain. Like, you get what I'm going with that? Like, all these things are adding up to why young people hate America. Look, you got you got the super wealthy who are allowed to live a completely different life. This, by the way, this is why people hate Epstein so much. They don't hate. It's not just about. It's not just about him being a uh, a child predator. That's a big part of it, but that's not the only thing. The other thing is that it exposes how the most elite people in the country are allowed to do whatever they want, and that's what really pissed people off. That's what really pissed people off, because the average person who've committed his crimes don't have did not have the level of wealth or influence that he had. They would probably just be someone who might find themselves living on the streets if it was anyone else but Epstein, right? Sorry, let me close these windows here. It's dark now, but time is 8:39. Okay, I'm making good time. But yeah, like you got billionaires, like I said, they can seemingly do whatever they want and have so much money that they can spend their money just building rockets into outer space or building multi-million-dollar underground bunkers in case something goes wrong in society. They have their own built-in bunker to be a doom to live out the wildest doomsday preppers' dreams. Uh, and like I said, if you have a young person, particularly a male, who runs afoul of the law, now their life will be shit for forever on. For the smallest mistake that wouldn't have hurt someone back in the 60s or 70s, because their their crimes didn't follow them throughout the rest of their life. They could still get a job, and I don't mean some little shitty warehouse factory job. No, like nothing against warehouse factory jobs, but come on, these that's not a desirable job for anyone. No one, no one dreams of working on an assembly line for the rest of their life because of a mistake they made 30 years ago. All right. Um, and like I said, shout out to law enforcement. Love them, but the legal system is fucked up. So you got a lot of people that hate their country just because they can't separate America's government and legal institution from America, the country of just people just like them, right? Then like again, you send young people to school in these um, and this particularly is the case of people in public education more than people who go to private schools or parochial schools. But usually in public schools, they're many of the educators are very, very leftist, and they push that in their curricula. I mean, how can you how can a young person not think America stinks when they're literally taught throughout their whole school career that America is bad, and America has done a lot of shitty things, but to only point those things out and nothing else is problematic. You cannot have you cannot have a healthy a healthy society where people are taught to hate that very country. That that doesn't work. This is why in other countries they're taught to love their country, not to hate it. Like it doesn't make sense to teach that it doesn't make sense to teach young people that their country sucks and then to expect these young people when they grow up to have a to have a healthy outlook on their country. And you can't expect people to have love for their country, much less a sense of pride and patriotism, when they have no tangible connections to their country. They can't, they don't have home. They don't own homes. They can't afford to get married, and many of them have to work multiple jobs and gigs just to get by. There's like less and less opportunity of long term employment, especially as AI is taking over. Now, like if you want long term employment, you're gonna have to learn how to work. You're gonna have to learn how to use the AI because the AI is going to replace many different positions. Look, I'm already telling you some of the jobs that's on their way out. Retail, like we already see this with retail. Like many retail workers being replaced. We already see that in retail. You'll probably still need people to do like the stuff like like stocking and inventory type stuff. But as far as like having a retail worker out on the floor helping people or ringing them up, uh, nah. Like I said, there'll probably still be someone on the floor because they don't need a physical person there. But the era of where you would have like all these sales clerks and people working the cash and the cashiers, that's done. Truck driving, that's on the way out too. Back in the 70s, even early 80s, truck driving was actually seen as a pathway to the middle class. You can see this in the movies and TV shows of that era. Truck driving was considered a respectable occupation. I mean, a lot of people still respect it, but they don't make as they don't make as much as they did. Excuse me. Let me drink some water. They don't make as much as they did back in the 70s and 80s, guys. They don't make as much as they did, and that is on the way out because they're trying to automate driving. So truck driving is going to be. I'm I'm telling you now, within 30 years, truck driving is going to be almost fully automated because if you can automate a truck so it doesn't have to make stops other than for gas, truck drivers going to be out. Like the only you'll still have people needed for loading and unloading, but truck driving, nah. Like people have, like I said, have became part of the middle class as truck drivers. Some of them even became wealthy because they would end up saving up their money and starting their own fleet. But truck driving is going to be automated, and that means also taxi drivers are going to be gone too. They're going to be automated. Like taxis already took a hit with the rise of Uber and Lyft, and and you see this in other countries too. Like they fight. So in other countries, they actually fight to preserve these taxi drivers by restricting where Uber and Lyft and other similar rideshare companies can operate, saying like they can only operate within this vicinity, and around here you have to get a taxi. But that's only gonna work for so long because like once that becomes automated, it's done. So it doesn't matter even in these countries where where they're looking out for their taxi drivers from the encroachment of rideshare companies. That's only going to work for so long because once they automate the taxi like vehicles themselves, what are you going to do? People are going to be out of work, and it's not going to be pretty because there were a lot of taxi drivers that have lived really comfortable lives, especially like they would get some of them would buy their own taxi cars and be living pretty well, and like they would get, I forgot what it's called, the golden something or other, and that was like very prestigious amongst taxi drivers. I forgot what you call it, the golden something, not golden key. I forgot what it's called, but whatever it was, like that basically meant like ownership of your own vehicle, whatever. Like you were at this point, like you were like working for yourself, I guess. I don't know, but in any case, that's going to be gone. Um, a lot of stuff dealing with food is going to be automated. We already see this with fast food. Like you go to McDonald's, you don't even have to deal with a person now. Like you can either order it on the app and just pick it up, and the only person you're gonna see is the person like bringing your food to the counter for you to pick up. So there'll still be people working making the food at least for right now until that gets automated. But the only people you're gonna see are like in the back actually like making the food and the cleaning up the facility. But as far as the people actually serving you, like I said, even if you don't order on the app, when you go into the store, you can use the automatic server, or teller, whatever you want to call it. The you can go right up to the machine and plug in what you want, and you can pay right there, or you can choose to pay cash to a human at the at the counter, but you don't have to. Like I said, you don't even have to interact with a person until they actually sit down, like deliver your food to you to the counter, or if you decide to eat in at the restaurant, they'll bring it to your table. That's it. So a lot of people used to shit on those jobs, and then they're gonna miss them when they're gone. Like I said, everyone shitted on working at McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's, places like that. They're gonna miss them when they're gone. It's cool to it's cool to like hate those places when they were in abundance, but when those occupations are no longer there, people gonna be like, well, damn, we used to be able to at least get a part-time job to do X, Y, and Z. Now they're gone. Be careful what you wish for. Everyone wanted to shit on McDonald's jobs until the McDonald's jobs are gone. Rob said, I heard about people with engineering degrees and they've been looking for jobs for 7+ years and not from a lack of trying. Exactly, bro. Exactly. Like, I mean, you got people with master's degrees not like working at Starbucks. And so that's often used as a way to say, well, that's why they should have got a trade job. I disagree with the either. I see my problem is not either with only getting a degree or only getting a trade. My problem is thinking that you can only do one or the other when you can do both. You can when I went into the military, I decided I wanted to get a skilled I wanted to learn a skilled trade, which I did as a cable technician, but I also went to school and got like a which you might consider a useless science degree, as well as a useless humanities degree with philosophy. I did like a, my useless science degree was, you know, biological psychology and linguistics, which was my third major. I didn't finish the degree, I just did the major. So I was a triple major in what might have been seen as uh, useless pursuits. But I also had my skilled trade that I got from the army. So it's not like you. So I find it a false dilemma with some people, um, especially the red pill, saying you should just forget college and get a skilled trade, as if as if as if doing a skilled trade you can't still get a college degree. Like it's not either or. That's my problem with how people talk about that topic all the time. Not to mention, even with a skilled trade, it's still good to have that degree in the background just in case. Like I said, like with when people were talking about how much electricians can make, they can make up to $250,000, especially helping build these new data centers. I'm like, yeah, one, that's a gig thing. That's not long term employment. That's sort of a gig job. And two, most aren't going to make that amount of money. And three, you look at the most successful groups in this country, the most successful, financially successful groups in this country are also the most educated groups in this country, Asians and Indians. So usually when they decide to step away from the path their parents set for them to get a STEM field major or whatever, they already, like, they get that back, they get that degree first, and then they step off and do something else like skill trade, or they go into entertainment, or they um, become an entrepreneur, something like that. But they still get that, they still make sure they get that degree first before they decide, well, I want to try, I want to do something else, I want to be skilled, because their parents are still going to be like, I still want you to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, uh, software engineer, whatever, whatever, whatever. But then once they do that, then they'll go off and feel comfortable enough that they can do something they actually want to do, like a skill trade or something in entertainment. Like look at you look at some of the Asians in like non-STEM fields or non-practical type jobs like medicine and law, and you'll see they still have degrees in those very backgrounds. Ken Jong was a freaking doctor before he became a comedian and actor. The show, what was it called? Fresh Off the Boat, was about a guy who became like I think a chef or whatever, but he started off as an attorney. So Rob says, well, yeah, if you have enough money and resource, you can do whatever you want. And I mean that literally. Exactly. You can literally do whatever you want. Not that you should, but you can. um, but you definitely can. Nipples Malone says, why has the military become so picky? That is a great question. Um, like my friend can't even get in. Like my friend has been rejected from the military because of his weight. But when I went in '98, there was fat people in basic training with us. Now they, yeah, they are way more picky. The reason being is one, because our military is of such quality now that they can choose to reject a lot of folks, and we have a lot of people, which on the face of it, right, prima facie, it doesn't make sense for them have to be rejecting so many people, uh being that very little, very so many young folks don't want to join anymore. young people have options that they didn't have 30 years ago. Like, back then, like if you didn't go to college and you couldn't afford to go to a vocational school, uh, you were either working at the local Walmart or you joined the military. Now, I mean, you can try your hand at social media. Uh, you can work a gig economy. Like a lot of people don't see that military is worth it. So you would think with less people trying to get into the military that they would lower their standards. But the other thing is, in peacetime, the military tends to be way more picky than in wartime. Let us be in the uh, let us be in the crux of World War III. A lot of those standards will slide. A lot of those standards will slide. Nicholas Malone says, I refuse to join because they told me I pretty much can't get certain jobs because I wasn't born here. I was too, man. What difference is it going to make? I get it. I get it. I get the frustration. What's weird though is that a lot of foreigners actually come to America and join the military. The reason being is that joining the military was usually a good pathway to citizenship. So I don't know what jobs you were trying to get, but I would say this. I'm not going to, try to tell you what to do. However, I would say this: is getting the particular job more important, or is being in the military more important? That's what I would ask you. If your ultimate goal is to be in the military, then you might have to just um, do something that sucks to be in the military. Now, if the military was just uh, a step towards your goal of doing a certain job that you can't, that they're not allowing you to do, then yeah, the military wouldn't be worth it. Because, like I said, it depends on what your ultimate goal is. Is your ultimate goal to be in the military, or is your ultimate job to use the military as a stepping stone to a particular occupation? If the occupation is more important, then yeah, the military probably won't be for you. But if the military itself is the ultimate goal, then I would say just go ahead and do something that sucks until you can, try to get the other thing that you want to do as maybe a secondary MOS. There's a little saying in the army. It's I forgot how they said it, but they were saying go ahead and uh, I forgot the terminology, but basically like you go ahead and do something that sucks to make it to a place where it's better for you in the long scheme of things. But I forgot the actual. I'm sorry, I forgot the actual term for that. Chicago Day Fly says kiosk. I don't get that. Noah says went to music school, full scholarship, printers and plumbing, stand up at night. Wait, so you went to school? You went to music school, full scholarship, which is dope, by the way. But instead of learning to be a musician, you became a stand up comedian and you have an apprenticeship in plumbing. That's outstanding. uh, at least you look, if the stand up work doesn't work out, you can fall back on the plumbing. And that was my point is that it shouldn't be either or between higher learning or trade or the trades. I, I think it's a false dilemma where you can do both. I think if you have the cognitive aptitude, then you should do both. Uh, if you're inclined, right? So get the degree so you have that in your background. Because let's be honest, like the college degree is now like damn near high is like damn near the equivalent of a diploma coming to work. Like they're looking for that degree. And that's another thing that these red pillars are disingenuous about. Like they don't realize that a lot of people won't even make it won't even make it to the interview process without the degree. A lot of these jobs just use the degree as a filter for their for their applicant pool, their job applicant pool. So they're instantly gonna screen out all the folks who don't even make that basic requirement. So still have the degree. You should still have the degree. But but if you want to do a trade job, go for it. It's not either or. It's going to take less time to do that apprenticeship in say plumbing or electrician or HVAC than it will to get that 4 year degree. And the difference is instead of doing, I mean, what instead of you know while you're in college looking for that internship, instead of that internship, you could be looking to do a trade to get that apprenticeship in a trade skill instead of looking for an internship to get into like a nice firm when you graduate. So Stay Glue says we're absolutely in wartime. We've been in wartime since World War II. No, you are wrong. I said World War III. We are in peacetime. Peacetime meaning our country is not actively. I shouldn't have to describe this, but look, again, I'm going to blame it on our education system that you are confused on this matter. When I went into the military in 1998, we were in peacetime. There were no major conflicts going on. Again, we're not in any major conflict. The war with Iran is not a major conflict. It is costing us a lot of money in high gas prices and causing global instability around the world as there's an energy shortage because of the blockage of the Strait of Hormuz. But again, you're because you're young, you never lived in an era where there was you never lived in the era of World War One or World War Two or Korean War or the Vietnam War. Those were major conflicts. Or back in the 2000s when we were mired in three wars at once. We had we had the Afghanistan war, the war in Iraq, and the war on terror. These three were going on at the same time. That was wartime. And it became so bad that they had discussed the possibility of reinstituting the draft. Okay? That's what I mean wartime. There are always conflicts going on in the world. That does not constitute wartime. So that's what I mean, stay glued. When I say wartime, I'm talking about us being in a major conflict. We're not right now mired in a major conflict. Now, the war in Iran can have the potential of becoming a major conflict if it becomes if it becomes uh, if it destabilizes the entire Middle East, but that has not yet happened, and hopefully it won't. Plus, they're still at a ceasefire, nominally, nominally, but no, we're not in wartime. Like I said, like during the wars in the Persian Gulf back in the 2000s, right? Basically from 2001 to 2021. Uh, but yeah, moving on. Um, but that's what I'm saying, guys. Like it is I do think they should relax their standards because you don't give the person the chance to do better. I mean, and they've made basic training longer, so you would think that that would be give more opportunity for someone to be able to adjust. And if not, I mean, oh well. But like I said, there was obese people in basic training with me. Like there was, and I remember because I even laughed at one point because a lot of these people weren't passing their PT weren't passing the PT test, and the drill sergeant he was like that's not funny. He's like that's not funny, soldier. He's like it's not their fault. I mean, you might say it was the recruiter's fault for allowing them to be sent to basic training when they're so woefully out of shape, and maybe that's the reason why the standards are so much higher. Um, but it is hard to get in the military now, and it doesn't make sense because there's less people who want to join. Like you, you take the general population. Most of the general population doesn't even qualify. They don't qualify because they've aged out. Although the army recently raised the age to 42, but even with that, there's still a lot of people who don't qualify because they're aged out. They're over the age of 42. You got a lot of people who don't qualify because the average American is woefully out of shape. They may not qualify because they don't have the mental aptitude to get a qualifying score on the ASVAB. Uh, they may not qualify uh, because they are dealing with different health issues, and they don't qualify. Lastly, because they may have uh, legal setbacks that prevent them from enlisting. So automatically, automatically, that's about 80% of the country right there. That's 80% of the general population right there. Just unqualified to join to enlist. And I'm being generous by saying 80% because it's actually more like 90%. But I'm gonna be generous and say 80%, but it's more actually more like 90%. So 80% of the country is already disqualified. Out of that 20% who do potentially qualify, then you would say uh, the majority of them are not interested in joining. So out of that remaining 20%, uh, 90% of them aren't interested. So then that little sliver of those who do qualify, um, that's a small percentage. And like I said, during peacetime, the military can be more picky, but let things pick up in the Middle East or some other unexpected conflict that reaches global concern, they will have to relax those standards. And they have done so before. Like when we've gone into major conflicts, they started relaxing standards. Like they started making the standards easier for people who might have been out of shape or not doing well as they scored on the ASVAB or may have even had a criminal history. They ended up giving those people a waiver so they could join because they needed them. So I don't know. But anyway, guys. So just to recap what I was saying, like I understand why a lot of Gen Z think America stinks. Sleepy Joe's is high. But yeah, I understand why a lot of Gen Z think America stinks because look, the the older folks have not provided a path for them to to think otherwise. Like I said, you have the super wealthy who are allowed to live however they wish and basically flash their big money dicks in front of everyone's face. You have a legal system that permanently cripples anyone who steps into it, whether by accident or just through bad judgment. You you have a education system run by leftists who teach the young people that America is bad and expect that to have a healthy outcome for the future of the country when you teach that the country is just evil. That's not that's not very sensible. Uh, you make it so that in our economy, young people can't afford to get homes, they can't afford to get married, and they may not even find uh, long term employment. They might have to just be underemployed, unemployed, or going between different gig jobs to make ends meet. Meet, sorry. Um, and the ones who try to do the right thing by going to college and stuff and rattled with debt, it, they can't even find jobs. Then you try to say, oh well, that's because you guys need to be doing trade jobs. Yeah, but for the past 50 years, society has taught people you need to go to college, right? And now that that's not worth much anymore, you're saying, oh well, you should have been. You actually need to learn a trade skill. Okay, so I can see why they think America stinks. And again, if you don't want young people to embrace socialism and to think that their country sucks, then one, stop allowing wealthy people to wave their big money dicks in everyone's face. Stop let stop allowing corporations to act like the new feudal lords of the country. And stop allowing uh, radical leftist educators to poison our young people into thinking the country is evil. I mean, because that's not unique to America. You could do that with literally any country. With literally any country, you could just point out all the bad things that country did, and that country could stand as being evil. But most countries know that it's not smart to teach their young people that their countries are bad because that's not going to give a healthy outcome to the country when these people become adults and they've learned only that the country is bad. And we need to stop allowing baby boomers and even uh, older Gen X from using their resources to restrict housing and development that can help uh, house up and coming adults. Like they use zoning restrictions and other sorts of bullshit to make sure that they maintain high property values in their homes. Meanwhile, new houses aren't being built, so younger people can't afford the housing the limited housing that is available. And then a lot of those houses are being bought up by private equity firms or even foreign investors. We need to stop allowing foreign investors to buy homes in our country. They wouldn't allow us to do that in their country, Like China buys up houses and farmland in our country. What the fuck? We should not be allowing foreign investors, especially foreign investors from our adversarial countries, to be buying up property and farmland in our country. Housing, we need to stop allowing, and even here in the country, we need to stop allowing private equity firms to buy up housing that should be going to actual families. And then again, these same people, these homeowners, these older homeowners, a lot of them aren't retiring and moving into smaller places, freeing up those homes for newer families. Instead, they stay in those large homes for the rest of their lives. So again, I understand why Gen Z thinks America sucks, and that's not. And I didn't even get into the political aspect of it. A lot of them disagree with the politics, regardless of whether we're talking about left or right. Many, again, many younger people are more on the left. Let's be honest, and so they hate the direction the country's going in. Now, I may disagree with them politically, but I understand their frustrations. Um, so that's another facet of it, is the political leanings of the country. Like when you have a large majority of the young people being aligned politically one way, but the current government is aligned another, that's going to excite a lot of friction. So I get it. I do get it. And I don't blame them. I mean, I may disagree with them, but I don't blame them. And I understand that. I understand where they're coming. Uh, but I don't really have solutions. I do find that the baby boomers, as well as their parents, who are mostly Gen X, are at fault for a lot of the things that these younger people are mad about, and is not taken seriously. Like I said, if the young people think America sucks, it's the older people's fault. So I'll leave it at that. um, but I'm gonna go, guys. It's getting late on my end. So talk to you later. Peace.